You know that well-worn adage of not owning a boat, but finding a friend that does? Well, Portland Spirit has lots of ways to get you out on the river this summer, including jet boat excursions to the Columbia River Gorge, daily sunset dinner cruises, champagne brunch on Sundays, and their new happy hour cruises offered Monday through Saturday. Best yet, they have bathrooms on board, a luxury most friends' boats don't have, let's be honest. Celebrating 30 years as a locally owned and operated business, book a ride with Portland Spirit at portlandspirit.com. If you're looking for a place to recharge your battery and have the most summer fun, Salishan Coastal Lodge is your ideal destination. It's over 200 acres of every activity and vibe you could possibly want. There's golf, tennis, hiking, yoga, hot tub, spa treatments, and if you're only there for the zip line, they just added 2 more. Best of all, they have a daily yappy hour with refreshments for humans and pups alike. And CityCast Portland listeners get 20% off with the code CityCast in all caps. So go book your stay today at Salishan.com. Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about why you have to wait even longer for the Max when it's hot out, the new plan for the Lloyd Center, and the merger that might bring big changes to your local grocery store. Joining me on this Friday News Roundup are BikePortland publisher and editor Jonathan Meza and our very own executive producer, John Notarianni. It's Friday, July 12th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Welcome, everyone, to the Friday News Roundup. Jonathan, John, thank you for hanging out with me this morning. Jonathan, it's your first time, on the Roundup, even though you've been on a show a few times now.
Yeah, what's with that? Where was my invite before?
We just thought 2 Johns against 1 Claudia was not going to be a fair fight.
Oh, good one, John. Good one.
Oh my God, is this what you guys think? We're like, get ready to rumble. The Johns versus Claudia. I was ready to be like, welcome to prime time, Jonathan.
Oh,
but
good.
now I feel like it's a cage match.
No way. Well, I typically don't like to veer too far out of my lane. And when I do, I like to do it on my own terms. So this is a bit of a thing for me. I don't do typically very often, but I have so much respect for CityCast that I was like, I'm going to go on, just let them ask me whatever they want. I don't care what it's about. Let's just have it.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, we're excited that you're playing. Well, for all of our new listeners, today is the day we break down some of the biggest local stories of the week with some of the best and brightest journalists in town. And if you're new to the show, I usually ask an opening question so our listeners can get to know our guests a little better. But before I jump in, I just have a quick correction from our episode where we went over some of District 1 City Council candidates with Oregonian reporter Shane Dixon Kavanaugh. In it, he mentioned Montevilla being split between 2 districts when he was describing where he lived. But in fact, all of Montevilla is in District 3. This has been confusing more than just Shane, who lives in District 3, because it was originally proposed that Montevilla would be split. But I think once they finalized that map, they were just like, nah, we're going to keep it all together. So if anyone else caught that and was confused, we apologize. We're linking to a map where you can just type in your address and it spits out your district. So no more confusion. Many thanks to podcast listener and CityCast member Laura Stribe, who is also running for City Council in District 2, which I believe, is that all of our districts, District 2?
Are you also a District 2 resident, Jonathan?
I sure am, yeah.
I knew it. You just have District 2 vibes, Jonathan.
You like
Voting
that?
power block right here, yeah.
All right, so back to my opening question. CityCast recently had a short summer break, but unfortunately my body decided that's when I was going to get sick. So I was sick every single day of it. I'm still recovering, if you can hear it. It was a bummer, but it gave me time to finally catch up on every Nicolas Cage film I had yet to see. So I finally got to see Pig and Mandy and The Unbearable Weight of a Massive Talent.
What?
And 2 of those films were set in Oregon. Pig, specifically, set in Portland. If you haven't seen it, highly recommended. It's like Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure meets Fight Club meets Ratatouille. That's my review.
Nice.
But mainly, it was just so awesome to see recognizable buildings and, you know what I mean, Portland. So that brings me to my opening question. What is your favorite film shot in Portland, Oregon?
Ooh, good question.
I'm going with Gus Van Sant, Paranoid Park. Came out in maybe the early 2000s about a teenager skateboarder who is skating at the Burnside skate park, and then some like intrigue happens. But more than any film I've ever seen, it sort of captures that kind of beautiful, gloomy look that Portland has a lot of the year. And it's all about the Burnside skate park.
What about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I was gonna go with that one, but you know, what's the big Harrison Ford, Tommy Lee Jones? Wasn't that filmed partly in Portland?
The Fugitive?
Wasn't The Fugitive wasn't it filmed here a little bit? Or is that Oregon?
Wait, The Fugitive was filmed in Portland, Oregon?
I thought maybe it's not. Maybe I'm wrong.
Flash Googling says The Fugitive was filmed mostly in Chicago and North Carolina. So
not even close.
You're off to a great role being outside your wheelhouse, Jonathan.
Cannot wait. This is good. Okay, question number 2.
You know, it's funny, John, my favorite Portland film is usually like anything by Gus Van Sant, because that was my first introduction to Portland, you know. But I just realized that it might now be I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore, which is starring, you know, it's the Melanie Linsky and Elijah Wood film. It was directed by Macon Blair, who also starred in the movie Green Room, another one shot in our area. But yeah, did anyone see that movie? It was really good.
No, didn't see that one.
Really?
Your movie knowledge is legendary.
Yeah, well, I'm sick a lot.
Oh, there you go. Oh, The Hunted was what I was thinking.
The Hunted.
The
Hunted is the one I got confused
still
about.
trying to figure
Hey, I'm not going to come on here for the first time in my big moment on CityCast and strike out that bad. And The Hunted did have Tommy Lee Jones. It was just Benicio del Toro, not Harrison Ford. Anyways.
Okay. Is it filmed in Portland? We're going to just...
Oh, you're fact checking that?
Fuck yeah, I am.
Wow. Much respect.
Tomahawk Waterfront Park. All
There you
right,
go.
Jonathan, we got one.
Okay. Wow. We can move on.
And move on we will.
It's so funny you asked that, because like one of the running jokes with my kids and my wife and stuff is that like I am not the pop culture person. Like I don't you can't ask me about like a mixtape or like a favorite song and like anything on the radio. I'm like, is this the Beatles? Like it's a joke, right? Like I don't know like pop music. I just never really was like, you know, the pop culture kind of trivia person. But that's really funny you asked that question.
Well, you proved yourself at the very end, you know?
That I can search the internet.
Well, on to the news of the week. Jonathan, you're talking us through a piece you reported on, right? What's the deets?
Well, it kind of got frustrated after seeing so many of these heat delays from TriMet, and ended up just kind of looking into it a little bit. So essentially, anytime it gets hot, which unfortunately, because of the sort of ravages of the consequences of climate change that we're facing now, is becoming more common, we're having these extreme heat events. And so TriMet puts out these advisories saying that, hey, by the way, Max is going to be about 30 minutes late across the system. And so I just kind of started looking into that. And I saw some folks who I follow online that were also sharing stuff about it. And I was like, well, that's what the heck's going on here? At first, I thought it had something to do with the tracks mostly, but then turns out it has to do with how the wires sag, and like these metal and copper parts just expand so much in the heat that it creates this lack of tension in these overhead wires, which are called catenary wires, which I don't know if folks realize, but that's actually like the plug for the MAX trains. That's how it runs. That's how it gets its energy. And then there's that arm on top of the MAX trains that pushes up on the catenary wire. And so in extreme heat, those wires start to sag, and there can be little gaps in that tension dynamic. And then it can cause a train to just shut off or have, big problems. So they have to slow all the trains down. And that has a ripple effect throughout the entire system. And it ends up with 30-minute delays on the MAX, which is a huge bummer.
In the heat.
In the heat, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
Somebody accused me of sensationalism in my story, because my opening line was, if you're trying to go to get a free ride to a cooling center on a MAX train, you may, die from heat exhaustion, like while you're waiting for the train to show up. So maybe that wasn't the best opening line. But
Oh, no. The line that made me roll my eyes and applaud was, to put it another way, when catenary wires lose tension, Portlanders gain it.
well, there you go. Well, Yeah.
John, I totally saw that line too, and I was like, touche, Jonathan. And I was like, I don't know what you're toucheing, but touche, Jonathan.
I tried to put the word tension and play with that in the headline, and it didn't come out right. Tension at TriMet as Temp's top 100 was the headline. I get so bored. People don't realize.
I get so bored. Just that's it. That's all we're going to clip from you, Jonathan.
People don't realize, like, other like media outlets have different people doing different aspects of the work. Some people take the photos, other people write the captions, other people write the headlines. You have proofreaders and editors and people that do all the reporting. And it's like at BikePortland, I do all that stuff myself. So, after 19 years, I just get bored. Like I don't like writing boring headlines, and I know headlines are important. Sometimes I'll spend more time thinking about how to write the freaking headline instead of the actual story. So that's why I tried to have a little bit of fun with that one.
Yeah. Well, I was just happy that someone is looking at how the city's infrastructure is getting hit by our extreme weather events. Has the city or Metro started any kind of investment in upgrading, at least the transportation part of our infrastructure? Because I feel like that's what gets the biggest hit. Visibly, that's what, you can't go anywhere. There's an ice storm, you're stuck, And now you're like, there's a heat wave, you're going to have to wait forever. So have you heard any rumblings of what's going on there?
Oh, for sure. It's been a big topic, more so at the state level than the local level. And I think I always say that, funding and money follows policy, or it should be the other way around. Policy follows the money, right? So the state is a lot closer to the federal government, and the federal government has been really open to doing much more sort of climate change mitigation funding, right? So ODOT understands that. So they've been talking about it for years, just in terms of how are they going to deal with massive, landslides on a coastal route where there's no other way for folks to get around, or wildfire stuff that relates to roads, right? But locally, I haven't heard as much large-scale investment talks around climate change mitigation specifically, but there are dribs and drabs coming out. It's just one of those things where we also hear locally, and you've talked about on the show, I'm sure, the lack of funding that all the local transportation agencies are experiencing. So funding for maintenance isn't quite as sexy as cutting a ribbon on a new big project. Funding for climate change mitigation doesn't quite have the ring that politicians need to get excited about. So unfortunately, the city and the region they take small steps on something that I think is moving a lot faster than that. So they're falling behind. There's a gap in what we're seeing. And the TriMet situation is a good example where they have tried to do some improvements to mitigate higher heat, but they've taken sort of this one step, but then the climate took 2-3 steps. And so now they're behind.
I was looking into this issue a little bit, and obviously this is a huge problem here in Portland, but it's not just us. This is affecting Amtrak trains as well. And you might remember, there was a heat dome on the East Coast, and traffic was basically shut down for a moment between New Jersey and Penn Station in New York because of this same problem. So I guess what I'm wondering is, just on a technical level, is there a fix that you can do, or do you basically have to rip out the whole metro system and rebuild it?
Unfortunately, after that story, I saw some responses from folks who I think, have some credibility. And it does sound like it takes a more substantial investment where you've got to essentially relay tracks or do a more comprehensive fix. And doing a smaller fix is only going to get you smaller improvements, and it may not be enough. So it's sort of like the broader climate change discussion where you have some of the sort of technocrats or people that want to shoot things up into the clouds to mitigate the effects of the sun or whatever, or to lessen the amount of rainfall. There's those sort of solutions, and people are talking about some kind of coolant that maybe the trains could spray on the there's those kind of smaller steps, which I don't think have much real credibility in terms of actually fixing the problem. But I think we're just, like a lot of issues, we're up against a potential massive investment need to deal with climate change. And it's going to have to trickle from a federal government program down to the state, down to the cities, to where you can say, okay, here's a hotspot, or here's a fix that's a lot more money than you're going to be able to just spend in your annual budget, TriMet. Because it's hard to really point the finger at TriMet on this fully, because as you both know, if you've lived here, this is a new thing for people. I mean, right? 10 years ago, 5, even Portland just never got this hot. So they didn't build the system with the type of resiliency that a place like, Phoenix, Arizona's light rail system was built to, because they had different expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to come back to that visionary candidate that proposed the slide from Vancouver to Portland maybe like 5 or 10 years ago. Do you remember this?
John, was that you?
No, this is something we've talked about on the show before. This is a like tongue-in-cheek policy idea.
This sounds like a John idea.
So we could just have water slides around Portland. I just think that this is an idea that is undercooked and that really could like be the solution that we need.
This is the same man who proposed a zip line from St. John's to downtown.
Zip line is not much different than like the aerial tram to some degree. I mean, one of them has a cage around you, one of them doesn't.
Very pragmatic.
Yeah, to speak of like slides and other solutions, I hate to say it, but isn't the tram also like on a metal or copper wire? And I don't even want to know if the tram might have issues with the heat, but that's an interesting thing. Maybe I'll have to look into that.
Yeah. Okay. So cool. I love this idea, John. I don't know what we're going to do for the winter, but for the summer, we're just moving on to a water slide system. I love it. Could you just imagine people waiting at every stop? No shirt, little shorts. Just everyone's like, wee, I'm going to work.
Shout out to Dave Stauffer, Democratic candidate for Oregon governor, who proposed this idea in 2016. I am not making this up, Claudia. This is a thing that was reported.
And he didn't win. That's interesting. Well, thank you so much for reporting on this and giving us another piece of what we should be worried about.
Sorry about that.
Not just in the future, but now. But we're going to take a quick break here. And when we return, more headlines of the week.
Hey, it's John from CityCast Portland. Let's face it, sometimes bad stuff happens. A serious injury, a catastrophic accident, even a wrongful death. It can really turn your world upside down. And when it does, you deserve unwavering support from a dedicated team. Yeah, you need a lawyer. D'Amour Law Group has over 30 years of experience protecting the rights of Oregonians. Their team of skilled attorneys, led by the renowned trial lawyer Tom D'Amour, will work tirelessly to make sure your voice is heard and your rights are protected. Here's what one of his clients said. Tom fights for his clients from the first day they meet him through the last day of trial. So if you need help holding those responsible for your injuries accountable, contact D'Amour Law Group at 503-222-6333 or visit d'amourlaw.com to schedule a free consultation. They're committed to fighting for the justice and compensation you deserve right here in Portland.
Want to know one of my favorite sounds? Here it is. That's the sound I hear when I'm learning Spanish with Babbel. And if you want to learn a new language this year, I guarantee it'll be one of your favorite sounds too. I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, and I've been doing Babbel for a few weeks, and it's been so much fun. This week, I've been learning lots of food vocabulary and how to order in a restaurant. This is one of the things I love about Babbel, is that it's about learning the language so that you can use it. As Babbel says, it's designed by real people for real conversation. So it's all based on real life situations. And these restaurant lessons are awesome. When I went to Mexico City last year with my girlfriend, I was a mute. But next time, I'm going to be ordering the sopes and las salsas picantes. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold, plus all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Okay, so this week I'm looking into a story reported both by Portland Business Journal reporter Jonathan Bach and Willamette Week's Anthony Effinger. They've both been following the latest Lloyd Center development. If you remember, people have discussed putting in affordable housing, a baseball stadium, and the latest proposal to come out is turning the old Nordstrom's into a 4,200 capacity venue, which is the type of venue size Portland is lacking. Now, this ambitious plan is brought by Mike Quinn. He's a well-known name in our music scene. He's the founder of Monquis Presents. That's like a local music booking and promotion company. If you go out to see music, there's a super high chance that you've been to one of their shows. The reason I'm sharing this news is because it appears this idea might stick, which is exciting because it opens the possibility to finally maybe make that weird-ass area more connected to the rest of the city spiritually, because it is connected by the freeway and the max. But do you know what I'm saying? Like, in your head, you're like, that's no man's land. Why the hell am I going to go there if I'm not going to the Lloyd Center? But I think that's what excited people about the baseball stadium, really, because you knew that the city would have to like pour a ton of money into that, aside from baseball. But just so you know, this is why some people are getting very excited, is that Mike is partnering with a very large entertainment group, AEG. And AEG is owned by a Colorado billionaire who also co-founded Major League Soccer.
Benevolent billionaire.
Yeah,
Hey.
He owns Coachella, you know? the arts festival.
Annoying, but benevolent billionaire. Yeah.
So Mike is partnering with like a pretty big player, you know? This isn't just like two Portland dudes being like, you know, it'd be cool at Nordstrom's, you know? So he told Jonathan Bach that before landing on the Lloyd Center, that he and AEG had looked at 7 to 8 other sites, and their targeted date for completion at the Lloyd Center site is mid-2026. And where they are in the process of building is they're currently working with city planners, and deals are in place with the Lloyd Center property owners, Urban Renaissance Group. So what do you guys think? Is the Lloyd Center finally going to get something?
Well, the good news is they wouldn't have to do many renovations. They could leave all the racks in and everything, and it would still have better lines of sight than the old Doug fir.
Wow, John. I'm sorry you were always stuck behind a pillar, it seems.
I just feel like I could never see anything in that room. I was always standing in the wrong place.
And I'm so short, too. And I was like, I saw everything all the time, John. Were you looking up?
Seriously, though.
The Lloyd Center is almost already an awesome music venue. If you were on the Loud and Lit bike ride a couple weekends ago, there were 5,000 or 6,000 people on the roof of one of the parking garages with a couple of live DJs.
Oh, really?
It was a massive, massive ride, part of Bike Summer, Pedalpalooza stuff. So, but it seems like if it goes through all the vetting, it would be possibly an interesting thing. I always say you can't have a really great city for cycling and a just great city in general without like good destinations and cool places to go. And Lloyd Center is a good spot for that kind of thing, just in terms of, you know, it essentially being still in the central city. Some people forget Central City is also on the east side, and it reaches up to the Lloyd Center. It's well placed. Selfishly, it's like smack dab in the middle of a lot of good bike network stuff. We just invested in the Blumenauer Bridge, and 7th Avenue, you know, is a pretty popular bikeway. So it could be really interesting. I've seen a few red flags lifted already on this project specifically, just in terms of its impacts possibly to getting around the Lloyd, especially if you're not in a car. So there's that stuff that I'm thinking about. But like I said before, I'm not the big pop culture guy, so I don't know how many of these. I'm not this music.
You're like rock and roll music.
I'm not going to go to these darn concerts anyway. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, but I think the elephant in the room here is the Live Nation development as well, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah.
Live Nation, like sort of overlord of monopoly powers in the music and live entertainment industry. A couple months ago, we had Jamie Dunphy from BikePortland on talking about the proposal to build a Live Nation operated venue in the ODOT blocks, pretty close to where this would be. So that means...
it's in Southeast Waterfront. It's a bit further, you know.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah.
But it is a race. I agree. It is now a race between Live Nation and this proposed venue.
Yeah, and it's not just Portland cranks who don't like Live Nation right now. The U.S. Department of Justice just sued Live Nation basically for like antitrust activities, for monopolizing markets across the country. And I think a larger venue coming to Portland is awesome, and it being someone other than Live Nation is something that I will cheer as well.
Yeah. What I'm wondering is if Portland needs 2 mid-sized venues. Like, if both go through, is that something the city is going to allow? Like, also, because Live Nation is technically working with the city, like, is the city going to be incentivized to push through their project with Live Nation and delay the Lloyd Center one? You know what I mean? Like, is this a true race, or are we just, like, making this up in our heads?
Yeah, on that note, I mean, I wonder if let's say the Lloyd Center one comes online first or is like considered more feasible in a quicker time frame, does that take away some of the thunder of the Live Nation one? Like, will the city's land use folks be like, well, we're looking at the zoning and realizing we've already greenlighted this venue over here, so yours doesn't score as well or something like that?
Yeah.
You got to say, I don't know how they deal with all the freight rail delays down there right next to the new Live Nation spot. That's going to be a nightmare.
That's what I was thinking. That's 100%. I was just like, dude, could you imagine? Like, also, like, I'm just thinking about local bands if they have a show, and I was like, I would be in that local band that's just like, we had to load in an hour ago. It's just like waiting by the train.
But actually, that makes me think of something where if folks are like advocating around this, or if you want to be like a good city leader and city council candidate or whatever, you should be saying right now, if we do the Live Nation one, they should pay to fix that freight rail delay situation, because there is a solution to that. It just takes a ton of money. So if we can get that fixed as part of the Live Nation thing, maybe that will round off some of the harsh corners. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something else I was looking at, I did some research. And I went and found another comparable venue to see who we might be getting. So Jonathan, tell me if you know any of these acts. This is the Rose Music Center in Huber Heights, Ohio. 4,200 capacity. Here's who they're booking this summer. Nora Jones.
Definitely, yeah.
Lyle Lovett.
Okay, I'm feeling attacked here, John.
Slash from Guns N' Roses.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Come on.
You know Slash?
Oh, yeah.
He was in the Beatles.
Alice Cooper.
Yeah, he was also in the Beatles.
Okay, I'm feeling better about myself now. This is great.
These are the sort of luminaries that could be performing at our 4,200 capacity venue.
So you're saying really cool, really exciting new young artists? I can't wait.
I mean, this is who's touring at Huber Heights, Ohio.
Well, thank you, John, for doing that really deep dive research.
I've got more. Jewel and Melissa Etheridge.
Keep going.
Melissa Etheridge. You've heard of Melissa Etheridge, right, Jonathan?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Who's this other person, though, that she's brought on here?
Jewel?
Oh, Jewel, the Jewel. Okay, I thought,
the Jewel,
so you said it like Jewel and Melissa, as if they're kind of like coupled up or something. Like, so yeah.
You know, I love that this entire episode has just become trolling Jonathan Maz for not knowing music.
This is... My wife's going to die. She's going to be so just like dying about this. This is hilarious.
You know, he's just like, I really was just hoping to, talk about the news.
Hey, let's talk about classical instead. Then I would have something to, I spent my time in symphony orchestras and stuff as a kid when everybody else was going.
Those guys aren't touring anymore.
They're just not,
those guys are just not hitting the live music circuit like they did in the 1840s.
Yeah, why doesn't Beethoven ever freaking come to town, man?
Hey, speaking of live music, I hear that the Portland Opera this summer is going to switch out from Washington Square Park and be in Peninsula Park doing opera in the park next month.
Oh, that's
so
pretty
there
awesome.
You go. Yeah,
no,
that's
that
gonna
is
be cool.
really cool.
Traviata,
right.
anyways. I just killed the whole
before we
thing.
just continue on this really enlightening road, what are you looking into this week?
I'm looking into the big changes that could be coming to our local grocery scene, both here in Portland and nationwide. But the proposed Kroger merger. So this is Christine De Leon from the Oregonian has done a great amount of reporting on this. There's been a plan for a couple years for Kroger, which owns Fred Meyer, to acquire Albertsons, which owns Safeway. I mean, this is like a giant, giant deal. It's like $24.6 billion. But federal regulators have sounded big antitrust alarms because, in places like Portland, Kroger and Albertsons have a lot of overlap and they compete, right? They're saying that like the prices at Safeway sort of regulate the prices at Fred Meyer and vice versa. And they're worried that there are all these implications that a merger between these two companies could have for consumers, let alone for like labor and wages and things like that. So the deal that they've come to at this point is that the merger company is saying, okay, we're going to sell off 579 stores to this other company. So that list is now out. Of those stores, 62 are in Oregon. And there's a lot of these businesses that are going to sort of be divested from this potential merged company. In Portland alone, 3 Albertsons, 4 QFC, 13 Safeways are going to be sold off to this New Hampshire-based company, CNS Wholesale Grocers, plus a ton more in the suburbs: Gresham, Hillsborough, Milwaukee, Oregon City, West Linn, Vancouver. Basically, all of the Safeways, as far as I can count, in Portland are going to sort of be sold off in this deal. And the question now is sort of like, A, is this deal going to go through? Because there's still some hurdles that have to be passed. And B, what does that mean? And at this point, we're not entirely sure.
Well, the biggest question that comes to my mind is like how this will affect grocery store prices, because my nearest grocery store is a Safeway, which is being sold off to CNS wholesale grocers. And I know the whole point of the sell-off is to prevent that from happening, from prices spiking and stuff. But I'm still concerned. But I also am looking forward to it because there is a slight chance it could turn into a Piggly Wiggly, because that is a much cuter name than Safeway. And if anything, if we just get a Piggly Wiggly and they're just like, okay, 5 cents more on everything, I will be like fine with that, you know? But if it's like 5 cents more on everything and it's not a Piggly Wiggly, I'm going to be bummed.
CNS owns a number of subsidiary brands. You could get a Piggly Wiggly, Claudia.
Cute.
You could get a Grand Union supermarket, which is a lot less charming than Piggly Wiggly.
I was bummed that some of the reporting I read was talking about the people behind this merger. They're kind of looking to compete better with the larger big box like Costco, Walmart. And that's like a big alarm for me. And like, that's just kind of headed the wrong direction, in my opinion, if that's who they're competing with, right? And that just obviously speaks to like the corporate influence on our neighborhood grocery stores. Like, I'm more of a corner store person. Like, I wish we could have somebody trying to, dominate the world with corner stores in every neighborhood and like bodegas and stuff. But like, I think Green Zebra was onto something. Although that was very high, higher price point. But I mean, at least that they were trying to go big for like, that smaller store kind of vibe. I wish someone would come out with something like that. But I mean, in general, I think we've seen, and I think Portlanders are reacting to this store merger thing in a way, because we've seen the erosion of these businesses go from sort of smaller, locally owned vibes to this more corporate vibe. I'm thinking of New Seasons. And
Absolutely.
So I think, people locally see that, and I see that. I mean, that's kind of the closest store to me. It's like when I moved here in 2004, the New Seasons was just coming online, and it was just such a cool like place. It was a spot you go to meet everybody, and just like, it was a great vibe. And it's just been eroded since they've sold out and had big corporate ownership. It's nowhere near what it used to be. So I think this merger brings up a lot of those emotions for people.
Yeah, it's just weird that we don't know what is going on. Like, the sort of, corporate folk involved are being pretty vague about what the plan here is.
Corporate folk being vague and shady? Never, John.
Corporate folk gonna corporate, yeah. The CEO of Kroger said that no frontline workers will lose their jobs and no stores will close as a result of the merger. And that CNS would honor existing labor agreements. So, like, I think that if those things hold up, that's a good deal. It's not like that's going to become a giant empty building. It's not like all the people working there are going to have their contracts just slashed. But beyond that, it's sort of like anything could happen.
Yeah. And it could also become a Piggly Wiggly.
And it could become a Piggly Wiggly.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Jonathan, I completely agree. New Seasons used to be a place that you would miss. Like, when you would leave town. Like, you would be like, oh, I can't wait to go back to New Seasons.
Yeah.
And it's so sad, but it's true, because you're just like, oh, I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that. It felt like home. And now it just, I almost had a meltdown at New Seasons the last time I was in there. Like, I was just like, But I think it's because we remember New Seasons of, yesteryear.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's fine, for other, like, I'm sure people are like, what are you talking about? It's awesome. It's like, yeah, but it used to be different, man.
The last thing I'll mention here is that it's just wild that this is, $24 billion national issue, but it's going to come down to the ruling of an Oregon federal judge. Did you guys know this?
No.
Oh, it still hasn't been decided. I thought it was like, this is what's happening.
No, this is sort of their like precursor move. They have a trial that's starting in August. A former Oregon Supreme Court justice is going to be ruling on whether this merger can happen.
Big decision for Oregon.
Claudia's like, womp womp.
I'll be honest, I've been looking at Piggly Wiggly merch.
Oh my gosh.
She's
Oh my God,
ready.
it's so cute. I was almost going to send you guys this picture.
Claudia, I'm just so shocked and like disappointed that you're so willing to jettison your principles of corporate like takeovers just because they have cute merch and you like the name. I'm still trying to grapple with that.
Well, I am kind of half joking, but
I know.
It's a pig, Jonathan. There's a man in a pig suit that comes to all the openings, and he's wearing a little like deli hat and a.
That's pretty rad.
Oh wait, are you getting it? Did you hear John? He's like, that's pretty rad.
Oh yeah.
All
Click.
right.
Oh wow. Look at this site I found. Piggly Wiggly on TikTok.
No, I'll be honest. I'm just like, look, this is my Safeway. What's going to happen?
Exactly.
Are there any Safeway-isms that are like near and dear to your heart, Claudia? Because I got to admit, I'm like Team Fred Meyer. The Fred Meyer's right around the corner from my house. But are there any like sort of Safeway tropes that you are hoping they'll maintain?
No, nothing. I have zero. It's where I can walk to. Are you kidding me?
Here's what I got. Over Memorial Day, I went to a sort of Safeway branded store, and they had a deviled egg potato salad.
I just had that.
It was really good.
Yeah. I got it out at Seaside. I was down at the coast and popped into Safeway because it was so busy. And there you go. Yeah.
Deviled egg potato salad. I hope they keep it going. If you're out there, CNS, hear our call.
Cute pig mascots and devil's egg potato salad. Those are your terms, John, for the takeover?
I mean, yeah, let me give a quick call to Judge Adrian Nelson and tell him to put that in the agreement.
There you go.
But honestly, John, do you care if a Safeway goes away or, turns into something else?
I mean, I think there are better and worse ways this deal could go through,
Jonathan is just shaking his head.
Could be worse, like if this sort of like major corporate overhaul is going to happen, they could just stay the same company and like close half the grocery stores in Portland down. Like there's a lot of ways that this could go a lot worse.
As long as people don't lose jobs and the price doesn't skyrocket, I'm not all up in arms. If people lose jobs and everything's really expensive, I'm going to be upset. Even if it's a Piggly Wiggly, I'll be upset.
I don't know. I'm kind of a vibes guy. A lot of these things, like it matters to me kind of like how you feel when you go into a store and like what the deal is and like what's the product selection. I mean, there's so many, these corporations are really good at serving their shareholders and not good at serving their community at all. And this just feels like a march toward that high, more corporatization. And it's like, yeah, everybody will, even if everybody keeps their jobs and the prices are low, I don't want to go in and have like 99% of everything be private label in a couple years because they're so cheap and they want to put it all in there, like little things like that.
I'm sorry, but it's a Safeway. Like it was already terrible. But I agree with you, Jonathan. I wish it was a much cooler thing going in there and maybe even local and, maybe even closer to my house. Well, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out and discussing some of the headlines of the week. Jonathan, you did great. First Friday roundup. You fucking crushed it.
Thanks.
Even if you know absolutely nothing that's happening in pop culture, you still freaking killed it. So congratulations, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. Our executive producer is John Notarianni. Our producers this week are Julia Fiaioni, Selena C.A. Reynolds, and Natalie Rivera. Our Hey Portland newsletter editor is Rachel Monahan with contributions from Brooke Lewis and Natalia Aldana. Our host is me, Claudia Meza. Original music by Jenny Conley and Steven Drizos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound and All the Kimonos. We'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.